Hey, I'm Scott Kennedy, and we are continuing to talk NFL draft. And today we're going to talk about the number 2 spot, the New York Jets. I've said for a while that I think the number 3 spot is more interesting with the Miami Dolphins because they have to come out of that spot. The Jets don't necessarily have to come out of that spot. They could stay put, take a quarterback, take someone else. We'll see. They could move Sam Darnold. They could keep Sam Darnold. So there's still a lot of intriguing options. And depending on what the Jets do, it's going to affect the rest of the top 10, top 20, really the rest of the draft, and have a big impact on the NFL next year. So I think the Jets are in a position that's going to be very interesting, not just for Jets fans, they're always interested, but for the rest of us in the NFL. And I'm bringing in my friend Christian Dyer, who I worked with. He covered the Jets for us when I was at Sports Illustrated. And he's going to let us know a little bit about what's going on with Sam Darnold, what's going on with the number 2 pick. Are there trades involved? Who are they going to take? We'll even talk a little Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson a little bit over the next half hour. And finally, we'll finish with just a season outlook. How's it going to get better? It's been pretty drab for the Jets fans. You don't end up in the number 2 spot, because things have been going well. So we'll talk a little bit of 2021 season outlook with Christian. So let me bring Christian in real quick. And Christian, welcome. First off, before we get started, tell people where we can find you. Where am I going to find Christian Dyer and my Jets and NFL coverage?
Yeah, I'm a Sports Illustrated alum just like you, so I'm over at Fansided right now handling some NFL draft content. My Twitter is Christian R. Dyer. Oh, that Chelsea mug. Just what a punch to the face in the morning. You knew exactly what you're doing. I'm a big soccer guy, too, in addition to being NFL. It's Christian with a K, Kristian Dyer. That's my Twitter as well.
Yep, we'll drop that in the comments before we get out of here, just to make sure everybody is. But this week, GM Joe Douglas was saying that we're listening to offers for Sam Darnold. That's correct, right? And that's not any big surprise. I mean, the GM's phone's always open. Nobody's untouchable for the right price. But you got to think with that number 2 pick, the quarterbacks in the draft, that Darnold's expendable, right?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of due diligence. And Scott, we saw this a couple years ago when Jamal Adams was on the roster. And you saw that the Jets were saying, oh, we're listening, we're doing our due diligence. And they ended up not actively shopping Jamal Adams until last summer, ironically. But at the end of the day, I think there's got to be some question marks about Sam Darnold. You look at him, 3 years in the league, hasn't played a complete 16 games during that span. There's still the struggles with interceptions, with decision-making, with durability. So there's a lot of question marks. Now, how much of that is just the fact that he's on the Jets and the Jets are being the Jets and don't always put quarterbacks in the best of positions? And at the end of the day, I think the Jets are saying we're open to the idea of moving Sam Darnold if there's a deal that comes along and absolutely knocks our socks off. If you're looking at the San Francisco 49ers potentially and a Kyle Shanahan offense, Sam Darnold could be a tailor-made fit for an organization like that. I thought potentially Pittsburgh, if they didn't make the somewhat mind-boggling move that they made yesterday to not only sign Ben Roethlisberger, but to extend him another year, that could have been a potential landing spot. So I think that the Jets are optimistic that Sam Darnold can progress, can take a step forward, can certainly improve if there's better talent and, in particular, a better offensive line around him. But there's also this sense that they could potentially be a player in free agency, depending on how things shake out. So, if the Jets all of a sudden got an offer of a late 1 for Sam Darnold, I don't know why a team would do that. But if they did, I think there would certainly be interest in moving on.
Okay, that was one of my questions. We're going to come back to that, is what it might take, because the Jets paid a hefty price to get Sam Darnold. Yeah. And when he was coming through high school, I was director of scouting at scout.com, and I lived in California at the time. So I've seen Sam since not when he was just at USC, but when he was at San Clemente High School. And it surprised me, it doesn't surprise me that whoever's playing quarterback for USC when they're good is going to have good numbers, but it surprised me the hype he was getting for an NFL guy. And I didn't see it. I didn't think he was a first round guy. Now, from what I'm hearing you say is he could still be a very good system player, but might not be the type of guy that's going to carry a franchise. Am I wrong on that, or does that sound fairly close?
No, well, interesting fact is that Sam Darnold is the only NFL quarterback to have had mono in both high school when you were covering him and now the NFL. So sorry, I went there. No, I think Sam Darnold is an interesting prospect, and he still is a little bit of a project. He's cut back on the turnovers, but it's really hard to grade him out given that the Jets' offensive line has been bottom 3 in the league, and I think you could probably make the argument maybe even a little worse than that over the past 2 years. This also represents now a second head coach for Sam Darnold and what's going to be his 4th NFL season. It also represents, I'm sorry, it's going to be his 3rd NFL head coach in his 4th NFL season. Also is going to represent an entirely different offensive scheme. And you look at the fact that there really hasn't been anyone who's been outstanding in terms of a playmaker to partner him up with. Le'Veon Bell, we don't really know. We never really saw Le'Veon Bell catch fire with the Kansas City Chiefs at the end of last year when he joined them. Is Le'Veon Bell on the decline and the downside of his career? Jamison Crowder is a tremendous slot receiver, but if you're building your offense around a slot receiver, you have a lot of issues. And P.S., by the way, the Jets have a lot of issues. So I think when you look at arm strength, when you look at his command of the offense, there are things that make you say, Sam Darnold can certainly step up and be a, maybe not a tier 1 quarterback where you're justifying that number 3 pick and the trade where they moved a lot of picks to move up from 6 to number 3 to get him in the draft. But you're also thinking that there are the durability issues and there's the decision making that continues to haunt him that tends to be an issue. I don't think Sam Darnold's going to be one of these guys we talk about being an elite quarterback, but is he someone who can get you into the playoffs? I certainly think so. And you just have to look across the river in New York, Scott, to see Eli Manning, who was never really in the conversation for being an elite quarterback, as someone who took his team to multiple playoff trips. And got them to the Super Bowl twice, won 2 Super Bowl MVPs, and was a rather marginally, above average NFL quarterback. I'll probably get some heat for that, but I think Sam Darnold could probably project in a very similar way.
Yeah, all Eli did was win. It was
except when he didn't.
A great game manager with durability and everything, but he's got some good numbers. He's got a pretty good resume after the fact. Now, this is a rhetorical question, but is part of this the chicken or the egg? Has he gone through three different head coaches because they overspent and drafted the wrong guy? That's part of it. If they got Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes or a true number 1 there, maybe he doesn't have maybe the Jets don't have so many different head coaches. Maybe they have a little bit more success. But you mentioned this a few minutes ago, and I want to come back to it. Is if they're listening to offers, what do you think it's going to take to say yes? What would the Jets take for Sam Darnold, in your opinion? Considering that they took he was worth a number 3 overall and 3 number 2s when they came up to get him. What's it going to take to get Sam Darnold from the Jets?
Well, I want to go back to the chicken and the egg, if you don't mind, for a minute, Scott, just because I think it's interesting. You look back over the past 20 years, and in particular the past 12 or so years, 13 years with the Jets since the Chad Pennington era. Chad Pennington's tantamount to legend in these parts, and he was the definition of a game manager. He had a noodle arm, but he was a cerebral quarterback who led. And that kind of shows you the situation that the Jets have been in since Chad Pennington. It's been Kellen Clemens, Mark Sanchez, Geno Smith, Ryan Fitzpatrick, and now we're looking at the Sam Darnold era here. And ironically, probably their best solution at quarterback, they traded away Teddy Bridgewater 4 years ago, who you could think would probably be a little bit of an upgrade, and certainly, while maybe a little bit more brittle than Sam Darnold, possesses some of the more athletic traits that, when you're behind a terrible offensive line, might be able to help him be a bit more impromptu than Darnold, who is a good athlete, but maybe doesn't necessarily have the escapability.
Teddy's a winner. Teddy's a winner and a leader of men. He is a quarterback. I loved going back, old again. I watched him down in Miami in high school. He's just a phenomenal football player. I'm not surprised at all by his success. Now, if they move on for that, who do you think, if they move on from Sam Darnold, they stay at number 2, who do they take? They're going to have their pick of 2 guys, unless something goes completely off the wall. It's either going to be Zach Wilson or Justin Fields, or do they do something really crazy and not take a quarterback at all? That's not going to happen, right?
Yeah, I don't think that the Jets are staying at number 2. I'll be honest with you. Whether they keep Darnold or not, To me, the starting week one quarterback for the Jets is either going to be Sam Darnold or someone already in the league. If that ends up being a Jimmy Garoppolo, who knows his situation in San Francisco, you could end up seeing someone like Garoppolo. You could see the Jets perhaps potentially trying to make a move. I got heat for this a couple weeks ago when I floated this, but a Marcus Mariota type, who maybe, who is kind of falls into that category of a game manager. And then they use their second pick in the first round, which is at number 23, and maybe go after a Mac Jones or Trey Lance if someone's like that, and develop a quarterback for a year or two. Or Teddy Bridgewater could make a return to the Jets. I don't foresee a situation where the Jets end up getting a Zach Wilson, a Justin Fields, perhaps. I know there's been some chatter about Mac Jones, depending on his pro day. If he could crack into the top 10, I don't foresee a situation where the Jets basically make a parallel move between Darnold and one of these quarterbacks. And the main reason is that they go into the offseason with $80 million in salary cap space. Now, I know some of that's going to end up going to Marcus May, who's one of the top safeties in the league. They're going to either franchise tag him or sign him to a long-term deal. But if you're spending that kind of money, that means you're bringing in veterans who have the expectation to win. And you're building your team not necessarily to win now, but to take a step forward.
And to at least improve, for sure.
Yeah, at least improve. And listen, the ceiling's very low when you're a 2-14 team to show signs of improvement. But at the end of the day, I'm not sure Zach Wilson's going to be the quarterback who elevates you to that 6, 7, 8 win category where you're playing meaningful football by Veterans Day, which the Jets didn't do last year. The Jets were barely playing meaningful football at Labor Day. So, it's a situation where I think that the Jets could probably move back at number 2. Mm-hmm. That would certainly create quite a cascade throughout the league. But if they stay put at number 2, it's probably a Penny Sewell that they're looking at out of Oregon, or a Waddle or Devontae Smith or somebody like that who would provide an upgrade. I would be shocked if the Jets took with their first pick in the first round quarterback.
Well, if they take a wide receiver, I've already said it would be ridiculous for the Dolphins to do that at number 3. If the Jets do it at number 2, I will be just floored. I would be floored. So as you're saying, it looks like they're probably going to want to trade out of that spot. Okay, so what do you think it's going to take to get that pick? Because I think there's going to be more suitors for that number 2 spot than what the Jets had for the number 3 pick. And that cost them 3 second-round picks. So, what are you looking at? And then again, like you said, the Jets got an attractive level of picks depending on who comes up and takes that spot. So you got to think some of the people that are looking at the Eagles. So you swap places number 6 to 2. What else? What else do you think it would take? Because it's not going to be, it's not going to be just another second rounder or something. What's it going to take to pry that number 2 from the Jets?
And when you're considering that Zach Wilson probably any other year would go number 1, I think the Jets are in a position to get a little bit of a premium pick or multiple picks in return. And I asked that question from Randy Mueller, who's a former general manager of the Miami Dolphins and also the San Diego Chargers recently. And he said to me that he thinks that because of where the Jets are sitting at number 2, they are more in a prime position to rebuild than Jacksonville, who also have 2 first-round picks and who are picking number 1 overall, because the Jets are going to be able to trade back, get multiple picks, and kickstart the rebuild. And I think a lot of it depends on what teams and where you're talking about teams moving up. It wouldn't be a great shock to see the Philadelphia Eagles panic because they've already panicked once this offseason with Carson Wentz. Depending on how they do in free agency, that sitting at number 4, they could move up and they could send their number 4 as well as all their day 2 picks and probably
the Eagles are at 6, the Falcons are at 4, and that's important because I want to come back to that because we talked about you've been hearing stuff on Mac Jones. I want to come back to that one. So let's go about if the Eagles are at 6, what else is it going to cost them?
But I could see them costing them 6, all of their day 2 picks, maybe a day 3 pick, and then multiple picks in 2022 and 2023 because this is a franchise quarterback. And remember the ceiling that the Eagles set themselves when they moved up to get Carson Wentz 4 years ago in the draft. And they paid a premium, and I think the Jets are going to be expecting that as well. There are going to be teams. I don't think Atlanta at number 4 would want to move up necessarily, but I think there are going to be teams, Denver at 9, depending on what they want to do, how settled they feel at the quarterback situation. San Francisco at 12 could be interesting. And could we see at number 15 the New England Patriots, perhaps a divisional trade. I mean, you talk about paying for a premium, but if the Patriots are looking for that long-term solution, I believe that it gives them the answer with Zach Wilson at a quarterback, but also it lets them punt on this rebuild for a couple years, because as long as Tom Brady's in the league, Bill Belichick's going to feel that clock ticking in the back of his mind to start winning some games and prove that he's the answer at the Patriots way. So I think there's 3 or 4 teams that are willing to move up. They would have to pay multiple picks in this draft, and in all likelihood, at least one in 2022 or 2023.
I agree with you. There is a premium here, and in the last 5 years, any team that has traded up into the top 5 has taken a quarterback. So there's three premium quarterbacks right now. So if you're sitting in one of those 1, 2, 3 spots, like the Jets are, you're sitting pretty. So who's the one that is on the bubble a little bit? Number 4 in the Falcons. They'd like a quarterback. It would be nice. Matt Ryan's 36 years old heading into the season. And when he takes his first snap, he's 35 now. He'll be 36 when he plays next year. A quarterback of the future, if you can get one at number 4, would be nice. But I agree with you. I don't think the Falcons want to mortgage their future to trade up to try and build their future. That doesn't make any sense. They have a few more years of them. But you mentioned Mac Jones. Hearing Mac Jones and Trey Lance, I think a lot of that talk that you're hearing is going to come out of the Atlanta camp. Because if they want to get a premium, if they want to come down also, they're going to need to talk those players up. They're going to want to convince people, hey, we're going to take our quarterback of the future. And one of the teams you didn't mention was the Carolina Panthers. So the Panthers sitting at 8 are going to want a quarterback too. So if the Eagles move up to 2, that leaves one less team that the Falcons can trade with, or one of those other teams. So I agree with you. I think you're going to hear a lot more about Mac Jones and Trey Lance, and a lot of it's going to be coming from that Falcon spot at number 4.
Yeah, potentially. I think so. And I could even see a scenario where the Falcons end up trading back, moving back maybe.
And that's why. I don't think they take them. I like your pick too. I think I've said that I like Penny Sewell if they stay at 4. But if they want to come down, they have to talk up a quarterback, because that's how they're going to get the most picks for it.
And it wouldn't surprise me to see Atlanta move back in the first round and potentially get someone like a Lance or a Jones in the middle part of the first round that could potentially sit there, play out the Aaron Rodgers scenario for a season or 2, sit behind Matt Ryan and learn, grow, and develop, and then step into a starting role in 2022 or 2023. I think that'd be the better part.
I think that's ideal. I think Mac Jones is probably a little more ready to play right now, just level of competition, et cetera, big stage. But Trey Lance to go and sit back for a while, I think would be ideal for him. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the Falcons. I think the Falcons, like the Jets, aren't a player away by any stretch of the imagination. And to get multiple picks for that 2 and 4 spot would be very good for them. So let's move on to we've talked draft. Let's about the number 2 spot. Let's talk needs. I mean, there's when you're had the season that the Falcons and the Jets did, then there's a lot of needs. The Jets have a nice package there, 2 first-round picks. If they're able to trade down, let's say they're able to even pick up a 3rd first-rounder, where are they trying to fill holes? Where are they trying to where do they want to target in the 10 to 30 spot in this draft?
Yeah, the list of answers on the Jets roster right now is shorter than the list of questions. And that's not a knock at the Jets. It's just a knock at where they've been. And a major reason for that, Scott, is because the Jets, up until last year, have been a terrible drafting team for about 7 or 8 years. You look at the number of first-round picks that they drafted on their roster, it's Sam Darnold. And before that, it was Sam Darnold and Jamal Adams. But right now, there's a little bit of a core in place over the past couple of years. When you look at Darnold, let's work under the assumption that he is going to be the answer at quarterback. He can be your solid quarterback, kind of being able to captain and lead the team over the next 5 to 10 years. And then Quinnen Williams, who kind of came into his own last year. Other than that, and along with Marcus May at safety, you've got Jamison Crowder, who we mentioned before, in the slot, and Mekhi Becton, who's a revelation at left tackle, the Jets' best left tackle that they've had since they took to Brickashaw Ferguson in the first round of the 2006 NFL draft. And there's the belief that Mekhi Becton can be a Pro Bowl caliber left tackle, which certainly is going to help with recruiting talent, or especially if you're looking at a quarterback in free agency. You've got that mountain of a man there. It certainly makes things a lot easier for a quarterback. And that's why I think that if the Jets do sit at number 2, they could go unconventional. They could end up going with Penei Sewell, putting him at right tackle, and then you've got bookends to protect your quarterback. That, quite frankly, defensive ends are just going to get tired running around these guys. They're so big. They're massive. They're earth movers. There's going to be a need at wide receiver.
I think Penei Sewell is the only player that makes any sense at all if you're not taking a quarterback. I think he's a number 1 overall in a lot of years. And if you can get an offensive tackle for the next 15 years, that's not a bad pick. He's the only one in that top 4 that I would say, okay, I can understand. Anything else, if you don't want a quarterback, you got to trade down. But if you want Sewell, okay, I can live with that one. Otherwise, get out of there and pick up a similar player and a bunch of other picks.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. And there's a need for there's that Chelsea mug again. There's the need for the Jets at right tackle too. They signed George Fant in free agency last year from the Seattle Seahawks. He had the expectation he was going to be their left tackle. If they move him this year, cut him, release him, it would be $2 million in dead money. So it's not a huge investment that the Jets currently have at right tackle. I do think that last year you looked at the fact that they traded back in the second round and still got Denzel Mims, who's been injury prone throughout his one season in the NFL, but he seems to be a little bit of a building block at wide receiver if he can stay on the field. He's good, solid. So I don't think the Jets are necessarily going to panic and go wide receiver in the first round. There's needs at edge rush opposite of Quinnen Williams, and
unfortunately, that's just a bad. That's you again. That's a good one if you're down in the 15 range. If right. that number 2. Even at number 6, there's still not a defensive lineman that gets you excited for a top 10, and that's a shame because I said the best pass defense in the world is a quarterback on his back.
So it's a bit of a poor draft for edge rushers. You look at Rousseau and Phillips and Owe. All those guys kind of come in with a little bit of question marks, right? They either have injury histories or they opted out last year, and we've got very limited film on them from 2020. It's also not a great draft for safety. The Jets are set at safety with Marcus May, and they took Ashton Davis last year. But outside of Morig at TCU, I'm not sure that there's someone that you really step up and say, this is going to be a building block of the back end. So I could potentially see the Jets at number 23. Going with the pass rusher. I think that's something they probably end up taking care of in day 2. They're also going to need interior defensive linemen as well. One of the reasons being is that there's in Robert Saleh, their new head coach, they're switching to a 4-3 from being a 3-4 base for well over a decade. I think an Aleem McNeil from North Carolina State could be a good day 2 pick for them. He's a guy who can generate a pass rush from the interior, but also eat up space in the middle. Davion Nixon from Iowa, who's someone I'm really high on, could be there late day 2 or early day 3, and I think he's got a decade-long NFL starter with multiple Pro Bowls as his ceiling. And Tyler Sheldon as well from LSU, who's going to be another good, solid guy. He's probably a little bit better on the first 2 downs. I'm not sure you want him on the field on 3rd down necessarily. But I do think that the defensive line this year has some decent depth at the back end of the draft, but you're not going to see that lights-out pass rusher that you want to go top 10 with. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, I agree. So multiple needs, but let's talk about the season outlook. If everything goes right for the Jets, what's their ceiling for 2021? What can you expect as a Jets fan? Not expect. What's a realistic hope? And remember, Jets fans probably feel like Atlanta sports fans, which I am, is everything is always going to go wrong. We're always going to lose. We're never going to get the guy we want, and even if we get there, we're going to embarrass ourselves. So, so what is a realistic Jets fan's best hope right now for 2021? Do you think?
Yeah, I think realistic would be to take a step forward, which would probably be in the 5 to 6 win category, and get back more towards that middle part of the first round next year. And keep in mind, they have multiple picks in the first round over the next couple of years from their trade with Jamal Adams. So that could potentially see the Jets moving up to get one of those elite type players, right, over the next couple seasons. But I think when you're looking realistically, Scott, you're looking at 5, 6 wins I'm not sure this is a roster that can be playing meaningful football in December, but I do think it's a roster that could be taking that next step forward, that if they do well in free agency, plug a few needs. I don't think they're going to get the super high-end guys in free agency, but I think it's going to be probably getting a wide receiver like a T.Y. Hilton. But they probably will be just realizing they're not at the point that the money thrown at an Allen Robinson, for instance, is going to be the best fit for them overall. So you take that step forward and you set yourself up in 2022 to use the remainder of that cap space. And you've got some depth built now from a couple fairly decent drafts. The last draft for the Jets was overall solid. And then if they're able to trade back this year, address and plug a few needs on their too deep, you go into 2022 with 5-11 or 6-10 with some more cap space. You're going to be attractive to free agents.
Yeah, you've got that arrow going in the right direction. You know,
yeah, I think so.
It's just always get better. You don't have to be the best, but just keep getting better and at least show. And free agency gets easier when your team is on the right trajectory.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you can get Sam Darnold to the point where he's a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, and throwing, consistently 250 to 275 yards a game, I think
that's a big leap. To be honest, to be fair, that's a big leap right now.
It is, but I think if you put some weapons around him, and in this offense, which is check down, quick hit heavy, hot read heavy, it could be a scenario where the Jets, if they can show that they can move the ball and have a pulse on offense, this could be an attractive team because Robert Saleh is a little bit of a firebrand. He's energetic. He's probably going to be the most interesting head coach the Jets have had since Rex Ryan. And Rex was a great sell for free agents rather. He was a great motivator in that regard. And I think that's probably going to be a similar path for the Jets.
All right. So let's sum up here real quick. See if I got all this right for people that are just checking in. Sam Darnold will be on the roster next year. The Jets come out of the number 2 spot, and we're looking at maybe 5-11, 6-10, and going in the right direction for the Jets in 2021. Sound about right?
Best case scenario, 5-11. However, Jets fans are expecting 2-14 again.
Well, yeah, and I don't know, for Atlanta fans, I got a lot of Falcons fans that watch this. It's like this is still a golden era of Falcons football. I mean, I grew up with the Smith family and not having back-to-back winning seasons for 40 years. So 4-12, I think the Falcons are at an 8-8 at worst is what they should be if they get some competent coaching with the offensive talent they have. Now if they can do something on the defense, but. Christian, I want to say thanks for stopping by, and there's just a ton of knowledge in there, not just on the Jets, but on draft day 1, day 2, and like I said at the top, the Jets are going to dictate so much of what happens in this draft that it was very important to have you on. So thank you very much.
Glad to be on. And just a quick side, I spoke with June Jones a couple days ago, former Falcons head coach. He thinks that Mac Jones is going to end up being the best quarterback in this draft. So if there is a glimmer of hope, if the Falcons do end up moving back from number 6, I didn't say number 4 this time, Scott, number 6.
They are number 4. The Falcons are number 4. Now you've got it wrapped up in your head.
You're in my head. It's the Chelsea mug. So if the Falcons,
I love Mac Jones. I do, just not at 4.
No, not at 4. But if the Falcons end up being one of those players like the Jets, they end up moving back. You're looking at 9 or 12, where Denver is at 9 or San Francisco at 12. Those numbers I get right. Atlanta, I can't get right. It's the mental block. It's the Chelsea mug. But you do, and you end up going.
Let me make this easy for you. I'm in Atlanta, and Chelsea is top 4.
And Newcastle's closer to bottom 4, so we got that going for us. No, but I think it could be an interesting scenario where Mac Jones does have a very high ceiling, and it wouldn't be a horrible pick for Atlanta. I hope Falcons fans can warm up to that.
Yeah, we can talk a lot as we get closer to the draft. We'll do this again, and we'll break down some quarterbacks and stuff. But Mac Jones, to me, you mentioned Pennington and game manager and all this kind of stuff, and Mac Jones is going to get that rap too, but. People always in the system. You were drafting USC guys in New York, and they were getting that rap. They're so much better than everybody else. How good are they? But you watch Mac Jones when he's got a pressure in his face, and he's phenomenal. And you cannot coach that. That is just God-given, that poise. And if you can get that at the quarterback position, you got something special. So I'm a big fan of Mac Jones.
No, absolutely. I don't disagree with you. And I'm also not upset about the suffering of Atlanta fans either. As a longtime Phillies fans, having to watch them on Turner when they played in the North Jersey market and hearing that chop and seeing, the Doug Glanvilles and the Sid Breams and those great
You're older. You're old enough to remember when the '80s Falcons, though. I think. I mean, the '80s Braves. I mean, the Braves fans have earned some success. The whole part of their franchise was 60 and 100. They were a joke until '91.
Oh no, I mean, but that was a fun team to watch.
That's been 30 years.
And they had those great 4 starting pitchers, and had Sid Bream, who I always liked Sid Bream growing up. So those were fun teams. But you've earned a little suffering too.
Good times. Oh, but we've suffered. We've suffered. And on top of that, I was born in Cleveland. So a Cleveland-born Atlanta fan. The only way I get a championship is when they play each other, like the '95 World Series. So something had to give. Well, Christian, I appreciate you stopping by, and we'll talk again real soon.
Thank you so much. Take care. Happy weekend.
That was Christian Dyer dropping a ton of knowledge. And this wraps up our first full week of doing these, and appreciate you stopping in. Hit the comments, hit the subscribe button, follow back through. We enjoyed doing this, and we'll start up next week. We've got several guests lined up, including John McCarron, Detroit Lions. So we'll talk Detroit Lions. We'll dip back into the college ranks. If you didn't check out our interview yesterday with Brooks Austin, it was terrific on Wednesday as he delved into other topics such as George Pickens. But appreciate you watching. Hit the comments, hit the subscribe button. We'll answer to both. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week.